Right, I'm gonna do a little video talking about my opinions and views on vegetarians and vegans. So, if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, just warning, you may get offended. So don't watch this if you don't want to be offended. Warning as well if you're an omnivore or a carnivore. If you're a carnivore, I think that's a silly way to be. But anyways, you might also be offended because I'm probably going to say some bad things about everyone. Mainly because that is my true opinion. That is how my true opinion will come across, and I'm just being honest about it. So, the first thing I'll say about vegetarians and veganism is, I feel like maybe it's a bit of a I don't know, false kind of ideology. Like, I think it's a little bit pretentious because a lot of the people who are vegetarians or vegans do it because they don't believe in hurting animals, and that's fair enough. I can understand that, but they also have this idea that it's not unnatural to be a vegetarian. I'm not so sure if that is true or not. I don't know enough about this subject, but I have considered that plants grow in different cycles and they grow seasonally. I have considered that in some parts of the world it might not actually be possible to be a vegetarian without import and export. Just because I'm not sure if vegetables and fruits that are native to particular countries in the world could grow all year round, or if there'd be enough fruit and veg to sustain people in certain countries on a vegetarian diet or a vegan diet. So, yeah, I think for that reason it could be a little bit pretentious, just because without import and export it may not be possible. But because it is possible through import and export, it's kind of fair enough. But to say that it was natural for us to have that diet, like here in England, we couldn't have survived many years ago with a vegetarian diet. We'd have all had to be omnivores to survive, so it was actually crucial to our survival. To say that you can't live as a vegetarian is bullshit, because vegetarians live for quite a long time, as long as, if not longer than omnivores, and probably definitely longer than carnivores. I don't know any carnivores personally though. So yeah, just wanted to throw that into the mix. That I'm not sure without import and export if it would be possible to have a vegetarian diet everywhere in the world. I reckon somewhere like India might be possible, but yeah, not entirely sure. But anyway, that's just that out the way. Second off, I'm not sure if a vegan diet is that healthy, but again, I'm not sure. I can't see myself being able to be vegan and living healthily like that, just because it's so damn difficult not to use anything that's got animal products in it, even like gelatin and such. Being vegan, I think, would be extremely difficult, but I think it's possible. But another reason why it might be pretentious is because I don't know if it's affordable. Vegan products seem to be quite expensive for the most. Being a vegetarian in general is actually fairly cheap, in contrast to eating just meat or being an omnivore. It's slightly cheaper. I'm not sure if being a vegan would be cheaper though, because there are certain things you can't buy and add to your diet, like butter and milk and cheese and such. So I'm not sure how easy it would be to be a vegan affordably. Now, one thing I'll say is I've been vegetarian for a few months at a time, and a lot of people say, "Oh, where'd you get your protein? Where'd you get your iron? This, that, and the other." Man, it's pretty easy to get all of your nutrition as a vegetarian, and it's pretty fucking cheap actually. That the people who say, "Where'd you get your protein and your iron and your minerals and your nutrients?" It's like, well, you actually tried being vegetarian. It's not that difficult, and it's actually pretty fucking cheap. Like, I'm an omnivore. I won't deny that. See this here? This is my little mush mix. I eat this pretty regularly. It looks disgusting, but it's full of quite a lot. I get a lot of fucking protein and carbs and shit out of that. That's quinoa, lentils and couscous. Now, I eat about 200 grams of that a day, so I need, what, like 500 grams of each is 1.5 kilos, so that'd last me about a week. So the quinoa cost me, say, for 500 grams, cost me about £4, £5, which, just to put it out there, is cheaper than a lot of meats per kilo. Well, or like the same rate as a lot of meats per kilo as well. Lentils per 500 grams are like £1.25, and I've bought 2 kilos before for, say, £1.70. No, sorry, a kilo before for like £1.70. And couscous is a similar sort of price. I buy 500 grams of couscous for that much. Now, it's pretty damn cheap overall. I don't need to eat a lot of it, and I get quite a lot of my protein out of that. Get a few of my nutrients out of that as well. So, yeah, it's not that hard being a vegetarian. You can get cheap, non-branded vegetables, and you can get fresh fruit and veg from farmers markets and markets in general that are going to be, the perishable goods. So they're looking at them in the next couple of days. They're going to go off. They are so cheap to pick up in contrast to buying meat. Like, I've bought like huge bags fulls of bananas, like more than the size of my head worth of bananas, for £1 at one point, and they actually lasted about a week in the fridge. That's pretty good. I mean, that was like 25, 30 bananas for £1. That's $2. That's really fucking cheap, really. You can get tomatoes, discount tomatoes, discount cucumbers, all kinds of things. Vegetables, fruit and veg is actually quite a cheap way of going. You can get all your curry powders pretty cheap and add them in to thicken stuff up. You buy pasta and rice, and pasta and rice is cheap as shit. Being a vegetarian is pretty fucking cheap, actually. It's slightly cheaper than being an omnivore on a budget, and in general it's cheaper than being an omnivore. So, yeah, but vegan diets seem a lot harder to manage. Stuff without animal products like milk and such. Get soy alternatives is usually quite expensive, and if you want to be a health freak and buy all the organic stuff, it starts becoming quite expensive. One thing I'll say is I have respect for the ethos of a lot of vegetarians and vegans who don't believe in the meat industry, don't want to see animals suffer unnecessarily. And it's fair, I guess, in this society with imports and exports. You can live as a vegetarian or vegan. And probably a controversial opinion, but people who eat meat contribute to the suffering and murder of animals. And they can look at me and say, I'm not a murderer, and they're not personally directly murderers, but they are responsible for the death of animals, whether they want to admit it or not. Animals die in order for them to eat them. It's that simple. The animal doesn't come onto your plate alive and you eat it and you poo it out alive. It's dead. And because you wanted that meat, you have contributed to its death and its suffering. Like, imagine being shut in a small cage, or even free-range animals don't get enough space for me. But imagine living on one small field for the whole of your life, being fed the same shit, not having any diversity, never migrating, and then being chopped up and seeing, your friends all get chopped up all the time because people want to eat them. That's pretty fucking horrific, man. Even if the death is slow and relatively painless. Like, if I stole like 10 orphan children, fed them up, left them in cages, and then cut their fucking heads off and ate them, there would be moral outcry. People would go crazy. It would be all over Facebook, all over the internet. Sick psychopath raises children to kill them and eat them. That's fucked. But that is the reality of what the meat industry is. You can deny it all you want and say that's not what it is, and when we don't hate animals, but you don't necessarily hate them directly, but you're contributing to their death. Now, I don't care about animal suffering. I wouldn't lie about that, and a lot of people give me stick for that, but at least I'm fucking honest about it. And another thing is as well, I've had conversations with omnivores and other people who eat meat and said, oh, if you want to get some meat, why don't we go outside and just strangle that pigeon to death and eat it? And it's like, they look at me like, that's just barbaric and fucked up. You're gonna go out on that street and eat that pigeon. You're a fucking weirdo. And it's like, what the fuck do you think meat is? Do you think that it just grows out of the ground like vegetables and, you know, never really understands anything and then gets eaten? As if that's what happens. Someone kills that animal violently. And you can say it's not violently. It is violently. A violent act is required for something to be killed by another thing. Not for something to die, for something to be killed by another thing. And a lot of meat eaters, when I say, you know, why don't you cut up a cow, cut up this animal and just fucking freeze it and gut it, and they look at me like, that's disgusting. You're vile. You're barbaric. It's like, do you understand what you're fucking eating? How removed from your own food chain are you as a meat eater if you if you're not prepared to kill your own animals? You're prepared to let someone else do it and pretend that, you know, nothing's suffering and everything's fine just because you like the taste. The reality is, like, you're killing animals and causing them to suffer. That's the truth of the matter as a meat eater. So I respect vegetarians and vegans because they refuse to play that game. I think that's fair enough. Now, another thing is, I don't know if it's possible for the whole world to be vegetarian. I'm not sure if you can produce that much vegetation for us to all live on worldwide. Although I feel like with import and export, it would be less intensive to farm crops, fruit and veg, than it would be to farm animals. Because when I look at fields, like particularly fields of cows, a large field of cows, you know, you've got like 20 to 30 cows, but the amount of wheat that you can have on that same field per the area is crazy, and the amount of water that you need for that wheat is, I think, quite a lot less over its lifetime. So I feel like it's probably possible for the whole world to actually go vegetarian due to import and export. But I don't have this knowledge to make that, to know that, you know, indefinitely. Definitely, that's just an assumption. So anyway, in conclusion, I respect vegetarians and vegans. I couldn't do it personally, and I think in a lot of ways it's a bit pretentious. I feel like a lot of vegetarians just do it to be on the moral pedestal and don't actually care as well. But I think most of them actually do care about animals. And I think meat eaters contribute to the suffering of animals. Whether they like it or not, they contribute to the suffering of animals. That's just my opinion. I eat meat, I'm an omnivore. And I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with the suffering of animals. But any meat eater who says they're not okay with the suffering of animals is basically deluded or doesn't understand what meat is, basically. Another thing I'd like to point out is, whilst being vegetarian might be deemed unhealthy, vegetarians live for quite a long time, and from being vegetarian personally, I think it's a fairly healthy option. And on the flip side, if you were to eat only meat, I think you would find it would be significantly less healthy than eating only fruit and veg. I think you'd have really, really bad problems with your digestive system. I think you'd just have problems in general with having too much iron and too much of this and that and not enough of X or Y. I don't know that. I've never just eaten meat, and I never would, because I just can't imagine it being healthy. But anyway, I respect vegetarians. I think they're on the moral high ground, and quite rightly so. I think meat eaters, a lot of them are deluded. Those of them who don't care about animal suffering and are cool with eating meat, fair enough. That's your choice. I respect the choices of vegetarians. I respect the choices of people who aren't vegetarians. And I think both sides equally push against each other. And I find that vegetarians get the most stick for it in Western countries, like they're weirdos. The reality is, though, I think that meat eaters are the ones who are pushy about their beliefs, more so than vegetarians, from what I've experienced. Anyways, that was my video. I hope you enjoyed it. I can understand why you wouldn't. But thanks for watching either way.